Thanks very much. That's a perfect lineup. We can keep it less formal as we go along here. And congratulations to our organizers here at the World Government Summit for keeping a packed house even at nearly 5:30 in the afternoon after a full session of discussion. I feel quite satisfied in life after Mr. Killingsworth's last presentation. I think my dialogue with my significant other is right at the level of my friends, which is a good thing, because she is my best friend. I think even my dialogue with my children is right there with a significant other, and I don't think my dialogue with my boss is that far down, although he's based in Atlanta and the other one's in New York, so I don't see them face to face very often. But I thought I was intrigued by the chart itself. We don't have a big room, but I would just encourage our guests in the audience to come closer because we want to allow about 10 minutes at the end for question and answer. So go ahead. I see a lot of empty chairs in the center, so if you can move up or if you're standing near the door, please come in. I think it's an incredible time for us to have the session in itself looking at the impact on happiness by both the federal government and the local government today. I think it's best summarized to suggest that the status quo is out, especially at the national level, where electorates want action. And I think the challenge that we have in 2017 is whether the population feels like they're serviced at the national level. And I would hasten to guess here that both in the European Union especially and in the United States, the results we've seen lately is a great deal of frustration, whether the national government or the supranational government in Brussels, Washington is delivering to promise. I think Donald Trump is a reaction to that, of course, and even with Theresa May in the UK and the whole debate about the Brexit and whether it's going to be a hard or soft landing in the future, of course, is right there. So instead of change at the national level, let's debate here in the next 20 minutes that we have together, change at the local level and its impact on happiness, and how local governments can liaise with the national government and then interact even at the higher level in a European structure at least with a superstate, if you will, not an elected government in Brussels, and how they can interact better with national governments and city governments as well. Let's welcome our guests. We don't need to introduce each one because I think you'll know them, but I'll introduce them as we go through our debate. We have guests from Chile, Colombia, Ireland, and here from the Dubai government from the UAE, working on smart cities. So the first question I wanted to pose, let's start with the ladies first. Mary Hanafin, joining us from Dublin. The reason I wanted to start with you, because you have experience at the city government level where you started your political career, went to the national government, held at least 3 ministerial positions, and then came full circle in life back to the city level. Now, first and foremost, candidly, where are you having the most impact? Are you having face-to-face interaction today? Were you making a difference on happiness at the city level today? Post-crisis in Ireland, I'd add as well.
I suppose politics in Ireland is very hands-on. So even if you're at the national level and if you're a minister, you're still dealing very much with your constituents. And I was lucky enough to be Minister for Education and Science, for example, for 4 years. So I was delivering, I hope, policies that led to happiness from 4 years of age. In fact, when I was appointed Minister for Education, I was asked what would I want to do, and I actually said that I would like to create happy schools. Now that was 13 years ago, before there was ever presentations like we had here today, and the leader of the opposition actually christened me the Minister for Happiness, except that he thought it was an insult. And given that so many politicians have been called an awful lot worse, I was very happy to be the Minister for Happiness. But whether it is at that level and you're delivering policies for disadvantage or for people with special needs, which I think we have to consider their happiness as well, or whether it is at a council level where you are ensuring that there's an age-friendly county where older people can have free travel, where our housing is of good quality, where planning is developed in such a way that we have green spaces. I think it doesn't matter what level, as long as you're always conscious that you have to deliver for the citizens.
Before I pose the same question to Dr. Aisha, how do you measure happiness today in government? You were suggesting that it's almost a mandate for city councillors in Dublin to deliver good housing, good green spaces, safety. These are the most three crucial areas that you can have an impact? And are there KPIs where you actually say we're making a difference or not?
Well, actually, very interestingly, over 100 years ago, in 1916, we declared Ireland a republic, and in our proclamation, we said that it was the republic declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation. So 100 years ago, we were distinguishing between happiness and prosperity. Now, like many countries, I think we might have lost sight of that somewhere along the way. So it's time to get back into that. But I believe the first duty of a council at a local level, if you're going to give people happiness as citizens, they have to belong to where they live. They have to have meaning in their lives. And if you have that sense of belonging, you must have a home and you must be able to live in a safe community. And I think they're the first two requirements of any council before you ever get into the quality of life and to giving them a voice and to the creative arts and all of those other elements, which are very important. But you must, at a local level, deal with the fundamentals.
Good. I want to circle back about the impact later with you on the financial crisis that we saw in the European Union, but specifically to Ireland and what sort of impact that had on policies for you in terms of governing and trying to maintain that interaction with your society. Dr. Aisha, I think it's worth bringing up. I know His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid has made this a government-wide priority. And in my opening comments, I talked about the gap between the federal government and that of the local government. This is very true in larger populations. You know, the United States, over 330 million consumers. Take China, over 1 billion people, so it's a big job. How do you marry the work at Dubai at the Emirati level, or the Emirate government level, and that at the federal level to make sure it's consistent? And why this is a priority today? Because many think it is a marketing effort by Dubai to put it on the map yet again and to continue to evolve. But candidly, is it much more than that? And how do you link the two between federal and Emirate-wide?
So this is our role not from today. It's from day one of our nation. It was the main commitment from His Highness Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, our great father, in establishing our country, that the role of the government, it's our people happiness. So we serve happiness in UAE and in all its states. And alhamdulillah, we are blessed that the ruler of Dubai is the Prime Minister of United Arab Emirates. So we can implement things and pilot it in Dubai and then export it to the federal level and vice versa. And that's what's happened under the happiness agenda or the happiness services. We are exactly mapping whatever being implemented in the federal level to the local level. Whether it is the champions, whether they are the chief executive, chief happiness officers, whether it is the diplomas, whether it is the happiness service centers, we are doing exactly what's been mandated on the federal level to the local level. But why we are doing it in our cities? We know today that cities are growing rapidly. Technology also is improving rapidly, and we want all those millions in UAE and in Dubai that who call Dubai and UAE their home to continue to call it their home. And that's why it is very important for us to make sure that we sustain their happiness and we sustain their well-being and they sustain their vision of having UAE and Dubai their home. And only by focusing on improving our resources in our city we can do that.
Good. What are the most important factors? Mary had spoken about housing and green areas. Security is, I would imagine, at the top of them. My experience, having lived in the country now for 6 years, I think e-government works very well. I like it when I go to the airport and I can get in and out very quickly. I like the fact that it's a safe and secure place. The infrastructure is new. But I'm sure you're benchmarking yourselves against other cities. What are the most important factors that you're gauging now with KPIs that make people happy or not?
So it is simple when you are in countries or cities that have 1 or 2 or 3 different communities or nationalities. But in UAE and Dubai, we have 200 nationalities, and they are all part of the fabric of our country. We cannot only focus on certain communities, we need to serve everyone. That's why in our projects and in our KPIs, we are focusing on different communities to know and understand the needs of every community and serve them in their own context. When it comes to Emiratis, one of the insights from our snapshot that we've done last year, we found out that our people, Emirati people, they are concerned more around housing. But this is not the case for Asian expats who are living in Dubai. That group focusing more on how to increase their income, while the Western communities, they are focusing on their needs around provide more entertainment spaces in our city. So there are different and varies on the ladder of the needs of different communities and different categories of our people in our city. And what we are trying to do, or actually we are now implementing it, to take every kind of insights that we got from that report and develop a lot of projects to improve the happiness for every type of communities.
Good. We often talk about data. Do you suffer in your position with data overload, how to best glean the best data?
Absolutely. Today,
I would imagine it's pretty difficult these days.
But actually, this is the beauty of our work. In smart cities, data is at the core of smart cities.
Yeah.
And today, if we are talking about knowledge economy, data is the main commodity for that economy. If we have a huge, not only big data, it's a gold mine of data, and we can't utilize it properly, it's a shame.
Yeah.
And that's what we do today in Dubai, and that's what I presented in the previous session, that we've developed a lot of tools to make sure that we utilize our data and build on top of it a lot of insight that will allow decision makers and to implement and provide smarter policies to improve happiness and to improve well-being in our city.
Okay, just a little heads up here. If you have a headset next to you, please grab it, because Luis Mea, who's the mayor of Kyoto, is going to be speaking in Spanish. I'll let you get your headsets on, and I'll introduce Anatas Bocas, who's the former mayor of Bogota first, who kindly agreed to speak in English, and then I'll come back to you, right, when everybody has their headset on. I think it's very interesting, Antanas, because you're almost like a mayor radical. You came with unorthodox ideas to be mayor in a large city. You're looking at a city of 9 million people or 8 million people in Bogota. When you came in, there was a drug crisis, right, with Medellin and crime on the streets. But you talked about something very interesting about changing the mindset of citizen behavior. And if you could change the mindset of citizen behavior, even in the way that people drive, that it would improve happiness and their experience even at the national level. What actually did you do when you were mayor?
Well, Colombia has strong difficulties to live in law. So we jump out of legal...
Excuse me for a second. Can we bring up his sound, please, so everybody can hear him? Thanks. No, that's okay. They'll do it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, well, I'm accused of being legalist, but I was a rather anarchist while in the university. Well, I think that Colombia should be changed by more rule of the law for our my daughter can perhaps could be anarchist. So I have to build the state for having a sort of fair dialogue between things. But well, the main ideas was life is sacred. So we reduced 30% in each of the terms that I was mayor. The homicide rate.
Homicide rates by 30%.
Yes.
Okay.
At a certain moment it was 80 per 100,000. In Europe you have 1 or 2. Here you are very well because you have neither homicides, neither suicides. A little bit of suicides in several years ago, but you love life. So that's when you do not love life, you will have difficulties to want to be happy.
Right.
Well, what we built was a sort of silence, very elementary, asking people to show a red card with finger down if another driver was using bad his car.
So you understand the concept here. So you gave a thumbs up or a thumbs down for people when they were driving. And you actually said it wasn't a gimmick. People responded to it, right?
Yes, well, we were afraid of some violence that could occur by showing, but the worst thing that happened once was someone spilling it on the person
That's
that-
pretty violent, but it's not dangerous to your life.
Yes. So the life is sacred, and the public resources are sacred. And then normally I ask a question. Perhaps I could ask the auditorium. It's the same bad thing to steal a costume consecrated and a costume not consecrated. It's clear the question. You can still non-sacralized costume, or you can still just the costume before being blessed. So who thinks that is the same gravity? Please raise your hands. Who thinks that it's more grave to steal the blessed costume? We have a level of I never win on that. But after that, I think I ask, it's more bad, it's worse to steal public resources compared with stealing private resources. Who thinks that it's worse to steal public resources? Please raise your hands. And the same gravity. Okay. So, if you are Catholic, that's a sacrilege. If you are not Catholic, you have to respect Catholics because our Constitution orders us to respect. But if somebody thinks that Christ is inside the costume, we have to respect radically his beliefs.
Let me ask you, because we have to be careful of time here. Could you change the mindset as mayor? People were very skeptical when you came in, because you were considered a radical. Could you change the mindset in a year or two? How long did it take to change the mindset?
Well, at the end of the first year, we have 70% using seatbelt. Before that, 0.
Oh, you're kidding. Okay, good.
We had difficulties in the night. Most killings occurred after people drink alcohol and get in fights between them. And so we put 1 o'clock in the morning as the limit. And I was dressed as a monk with a big clock saying to people, go house, go to your house. So law enforcement become an artistic performance. So,
yeah, let's keep it there because I want to bring the mayor in, then I'll come back with another question or two. One, what I thought was incredible, we had our conversation earlier today, you asked for a voluntary tax. And you got a phenomenal response that people are willing to pay 10%, if not more, to support local government if they thought it was effective or not. So it was a voluntary tax to get people to pay more, and the society was willing to do so. I wanted to come to you, Luis Mea, about the doctrine of happiness. You were saying it's not a national policy for Chile, which is known as a very efficient government, but in Quillota, your city of 100,000 people, it's in the DNA, happiness. How did you implement this from the very beginning as mayor?
Bueno, la verdad es que en Chile no hay medición de felicidad, ni hay ministro de la felicidad. Sin embargo, nuestra comuna, que tiene 100.000 habitantes, al ver que lográbamos objetivos materiales, pero no lo que nosotros buscábamos, pusimos como meta la felicidad del ser humano. Y lo hicimos con ciertos principios que trajimos y que llevamos desde las neurociencias con el profesor Humberto Maturana, chileno. Uno, reconocer que la principal necesidad que tiene todo ser humano es ser visto. Es decir, que lo vean, que lo veamos nosotros como autoridades, que lo vea la familia, que lo vea quien le rodea. Y lo segundo, el ser humano se mueve por la emoción y no por la razón. Con esos principios nos planteamos una estrategia para lograr comunidades felices. Y planteamos lo siguiente, diagnosticamos que una de las causas de la insatisfacción y la infelicidad de nuestro pueblo estaba en el excesivo o la excesiva invitación a competir por sobre el colaborar. Por lo tanto, ¿en qué está Quillota hoy día? en una transformación cultural. Queremos pasar de la competencia a la colaboración. El ser humano está programado más para colaborar que para competir. Por lo tanto, es muy simple. Cuando se le obliga a competir, desde pequeño, cuando grande, está en el malestar. Cuando se le invita a colaborar, está en el bienestar. Por lo tanto, ¿cuáles son nuestras estrategias? Promover la solidaridad. Creamos un banco solidario que se llama Banamor para promover la solidaridad. Hemos creado varias políticas públicas que tienen que ver con la solidaridad y hemos acuñado un término que yo quiero compartir con ustedes hoy día: rentabilidad humana, que lo queremos poner al lado de la rentabilidad económica y social en la evaluación de los proyectos. ¿Y qué es rentabilidad humana? ¿Cuánto gana en motivación, en dignificación y en ser visto un ser humano frente a un proyecto? Y a mayor rentabilidad humana, más felicidad y más éxito en los proyectos.
Good follows. Very interesting. Chile is known as one of the most open economies in the world. It's been a free trader for decades. But I wanted to get your thoughts on the backlash to globalization, not just in Chile, but internationally, and how this is filtering into Kyoto, which was really conscious of how society policies are affecting them on a day-to-day basis. Is there a backlash to globalization that you're seeing with your measurements in Kyoto?
Bueno, la verdad es que Chile tiene un problema que es reconocido también internacionalmente. Ha tenido un gran crecimiento económico, ha sido un ejemplo muchas veces de economía como país, pero con una tremenda inequidad, una mala distribución de los recursos. Entonces, un PIB alto, un ingreso económico en ascenso, pero una mala distribución. Y eso ha significado que existan diversas formas de manifestar el malestar a nivel nacional. Quillota lo que ha tratado de hacer es decirle al resto del país que es posible una mirada nueva del desarrollo, una mirada donde importe más la espiritualidad, donde realmente el ser humano sea lo más importante. Y quiero contarles a ustedes que esto ha significado obtener una gran rentabilidad también política y mayor gobernabilidad, porque en las elecciones municipales los votos en Quillota se pueden reelegir en Chile los alcaldes, y la votación del alcalde, en este caso de quien les habla, ha ido en ascenso pese a los muchos años que yo llevo como alcalde. En resumen, es posible desde lo local empezar a cambiar el mundo. Es una estrategia distinta quizás. A veces desde los gobiernos centrales es más difícil, pero si todas las comunas van cambiando, el mundo también va a cambiar, para mejor y para la felicidad de la gente.
Dr. Aisha, I had a conversation in an interview for one of my CNN programs with Sultan al-Mansouri, His Excellency the Minister of Economy, and he said, despite the fact there's a backlash to globalization, I think this will pertain to our other panelists as well, Dubai in particular, but the UAE overall, wants to be more globalized than ever, that this is an economy based on globalization. Now you see the backlash in Chile. Why do you think this society can handle being more globalized to drive growth and not to cocoon or close up in your view and still sustain a happiness level in your view?
You know, having 200 nationalities is the best example to say that we are already a global city. And the best thing that we have it here as part of our DNA as Emiratis, that we are open to all these nationalities. Having high tolerance, having today institutionalized happiness and tolerance as part of our government, this is by itself as an example of how to set a city or a country as a global country.
Let me ask you that in a slightly different, does the Emirati population go along with that completely? They feel comfortable that it's opening up and it's becoming more of a minority. They seem to embrace it, and that's sustainable from what you can see.
Sitting in this stage by itself is giving that example. And seeing all my colleagues here also, this is a great example of how we are embracing everyone. And actually, as I said, this is part of our DNA and part of our religion to embrace everyone. Good.
Mary, I wanted to follow up because of the impact of the financial crisis that didn't spare Ireland. You had an unemployment rate going up to 15%. It's been cut in half. What was the experience and how much pain was there at the city level as a result of that debt crisis? You mentioned housing's right up there at the top in the Irish mindset of protecting housing and having affordable housing. What happened?
when you think of the geographic location of Ireland, which is, on the one hand, we have the Atlantic and the United States, and on the other, we have Great Britain and Europe. So we've one of the most globalized economies in the world. But our Celtic tiger was raging right through the end of the 90s and on for the next decade. And we put a lot of money into education and infrastructure and pensions and family supports. But when America and the banks in America sneezed, our Celtic tiger got pneumonia. And we ended up having a very serious economic crash, like a lot of other countries, which had a huge impact on families, on young people who had just bought houses at very high prices, which were now no longer worth that money particularly. And of course government policies then had to be cut back, public servants pay, welfare payments, very, very difficult for people. It's a very difficult time. But we've come out of that now. And our unemployment rate is now down to 7%. And the economy is moving. We've kept, I think, the fundamentals strong. Our education system is very, very strong. And the fact that we are probably the only English-speaking country after Great Britain leaves Europe, I think will probably stand to us over the next number of years as well. But it was a difficult time for, what I would say, community. And for me, social inclusion and community is hugely important for the happiness of the citizens, to get back to what we're talking about. Because people didn't have time to volunteer in the same way. They didn't have time to spend with their families because they were commuting and they were working so hard, all during that Celtic tiger. And family has always been very important in Ireland, and I think even that suffered, and suffered even with the pressures. But now we've gone back to those values. I think one of the great examples, and I'm just going to link it to the UAE, is that Ireland hosted the World Games of the Special Olympics in 2003, and we were the first country outside of the United States to do it. But the amount of towns and cities around Ireland and volunteers and people who all came out to support and love and host families with special needs, and the next host is actually going to be the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi.
2019.
Which is a very brave thing to do, because thousands of people coming with a lot of disabilities and a lot of special needs, and probably one of the most rewarding things they will ever do. But it's that sense of volunteerism and community and supporting each other that will actually lead not just to the happiness when it happens, but actually to a long-term happiness. There are still signs up all around the country in Ireland of towns 14 years ago saying we were a host city to the country of Chile or Colombia or Italy or whatever, you know. And they're the kind of values, I think, that at a local level and at a government level we need to go back to.
Great. In fact, on a quick answer, if you don't mind, you remember the movie Wall Street with Gordon Gekko giving the speech that greed is good. Greed is great, actually.
Yeah.
What did we learn in Ireland about running after the golden prize of financial wealth, a real estate boom, and then what impact has had on happiness? You make it sound like people did get their value system back.
Well, I think from a government point of view, we learned not to be over-dependent on one source of funding. And in our case, it was funding from housing and from infrastructure. And whereas we did have long-term plans, nothing could prepare us for the wallop that we got, particularly with banks. I think the other lesson we learned from a governance point of view was don't always believe the people in charge, like your regulator, your bankers, the people in whom we trusted. The people would say that about politicians as well. So there's probably an element of it. What do we learn good out of it? I think for any of us is not to lose sight of our core values. Our core values as people and who we are and what we stand for.
That's very interesting. Professor Bokas, the last question, then I'm going to try to take maybe 2 minutes of questions from the floor. Can I ask you, if anybody wants to ask a question, let's get a microphone to you now. If there's any questions from the floor, please just raise your hand. No questions. Okay, good. Final question to Professor Bokas. The relationship between happiness and happiness policy and foreign direct investment. You measured this in Bogota. Nobody wanted to come into Bogota because it was so rough. What happened after you put your policies into place to the investment horizon in Colombia, which has had an incredible economic turnaround?
Yes, well,
If you want to speak in Spanish, feel free. We have our headsets. It's up to you.
entonces cuando llegamos al gobierno, la empresa de energía estaba quebrada y necesitábamos encontrar una solución. Por otro lado, en el plan de desarrollo habíamos dicho vamos a traer $1 billón, no sabemos de dónde, pero miramos los dos problemas, los dos retos, y juntamos y dijimos, ven, emitamos acciones y consigamos el capital suficiente a la empresa de energía. Necesitábamos $1 billón, conseguimos $2,2 billones. ¿Cómo? Simplemente jugando según las reglas, con una buena banca de inversión asesorándonos y no haciendo cuartos de transparencia ahí medio oscuros, haciendo las cosas. Ahora, mi teoría siempre es que el dinero es un coordinador de la conducta humana, tal vez transitorio. O sea, no sabemos, pero por ahora es el que mejor funciona para algunas tareas. Ahora, lo que hemos escuchado hoy en el día es, el discurso maravilloso es la economía no lo es todo. Digamos, las mejoras de la economía pueden generar un despilfarro terrible, pueden generar una agresividad interna. Entonces, en Colombia necesitamos matizar nuestro interés económico y poner de relieve que existe mucha solidaridad, que es incluso conmovedora. Yo practico mucho una cosa que es mirar asomos. Son como momentos, glimpses, perhaps in English, where you see the utopia realized. It's just for a moment. It disappears very easily. Pero, digamos, educarnos todos en ver lo bueno del otro. Esa es la recomendación más importante que saco de mi experiencia. La imagen del otro influye más en mi conducta que en la conducta, perdón, influye más lo que veo en el otro que lo que pienso de mí mismo. O sea, uno es a imagen y semejanza del prójimo. Entonces, si uno quiere mejorar, tiene que ver el prójimo mejor.
Great. And I think in fairness to Mayor Mayor, I wanted to ask you one more question, but be brief with your answer. Are we finding the strains of democracy responding to the call of the individual now to be happy? It sounds like you're moving more to the left in terms of policy in Kyoto because of globalization. Can democracy respond to be delivering the happiness that people are looking for at the city level, in your view?
Yo creo que sí, yo creo que la gente está respondiendo, que la gente cada día más cree en el proyecto. Todavía falta mucho, tenemos muchos problemas que enfrentar, pero la gente está entendiendo que en la colaboración hay un camino. Y lo otro que quería decirles es que uno de los impedimentos que tenemos para desarrollar el proyecto es el tema de la desconfianza, un fenómeno mundial, especialmente con el mundo político, porque en la desconfianza no hay colaboración. Y para nosotros la confianza se recupera cuando los políticos nos ponemos en sintonía con el sentir y el dolor de los ciudadanos. Y esa es la estrategia que estamos usando y nos está dando resultados y hay una respuesta de la gente y por lo tanto la democracia se expresa cada 4 años en la votación o en la participación ciudadana a partir de esta invitación.
Dr. Aisha, final comments and we'll wrap up the panel. Thank you.
Actually, we have example here in Dubai into how to influence our policies through our happiness agenda. It is a very simple agenda that is aligned again with the happiness framework that's been implemented in the federal. We want to discover what is our people needs and then change all our policies and projects to fulfill these needs. And we want also to educate our people into how to prioritize happiness in their life and measure it. And by these 4 portfolios, we impact a lot of things happening in our city. When having this kind of happiness agenda as an umbrella of everything we do it in our city, and making it as a checklist for all the projects that come in, and even our investment tool in our city. If this project really will educate our people, whether it is fulfilling the needs of our people, and we took, again, very scientific needs framework, which is, we call it the ABCD of needs, whether it is affective needs, or basic needs, or cognitive needs, or deeper needs. And having such kind of a very simple framework make our life much easier.
Great. Let's give a nice round of applause. Thanks a lot for being so succinct.